All right, you guys, welcome to Cannabis Marketing Live. I'm Kendra Losee, your host, where we are bringing you the brightest, the boldest, and the most badass people, ideas, and technologies in the cannabis industry. Joining me today is Christian Valdez of Traffic Roots. I'm very excited to have him here. Before I get started, be sure and put any comments in the section in the comments and questions and likes, and be sure and tell us where you're coming here from, where you're watching from, because we want to know what state you're in, because that is always so important. All right, so as we get started here, let me tell you a little bit about Christian. Christian is the CEO of Traffic Roots. He is a leading executive in the programming advertising industry, and we will get into the definition of programmatic advertising as we get started. He's the founder and CEO of Traffic Roots, a digital advertising network that is bringing digital advertising to the cannabis space. We've talked about the challenges. Some of you are more aware of those challenges than others. So this is really exciting to be able to talk to Christian today. Christian and I, let me bring him on this side here. Christian and I was introduced to Christian originally a couple months ago. Sorry. The puppy who's been quiet all day starts to bark as soon as I go live. I was introduced to Christian a couple months ago, and I immediately, after our first conversation, pulled him in to join me on speaking on a panel talking about cannabis marketing and sales at a leadership conference. So welcome, Christian. I'm excited to have you here today. I waited till you drank something to...
Thanks, Kendra. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's fine. I have to clear my throat so then I don't have to... that's all right. I don't
Absolutely.
mind.
I did that on purpose, just like the dog waits till he barks. I waited till you were drinking
exactly,
to actually
right?
toss it over to you.
It's okay.
So, yeah, we see Dan Grimm's in the house. Welcome, Dan. We're excited to have you here. Christian, can you tell me a little bit, or can you tell people a little bit on what a programmatic advertising is?
Yeah, so programmatic advertising is, as consumers, you and I use it every day, or we interact with it every day. But just the technicality and the technical aspect of what comes behind it, obviously we don't understand it 100%. So programmatic ads basically are all the ads that are floating around a content site. So like you and I were just talking about off air, when you're about to purchase that tripod on Amazon and you didn't, most likely that ad is going to be retargeted back to you through another site. Amazon basically saying, hey, Kendra, I know you want this. Make sure you click on it. So programmatic means we're able to push ads to a lot of sites. And by doing so, we're able to create a very large digital footprint for brands and for services and everybody else.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about how you got started in this space and how how Traffic Roots came about?
So I was previously the COO for another ad network that didn't do any cannabis, and time again, through the chain of command, my sales managers and so forth would bring me either cannabis brands or publications that were interested in working with us. And simply at the time, because of the nature of the industry and that taboo of the cannabis industry, even now, we wouldn't be able to service them. And we weren't. And it just kept happening to the point where curiosity really said, well, you know what? That doesn't make any sense. Let me see what's going on in the cannabis industry. I know it's growing. I know it's an upcoming industry. Why isn't there any digital advertising avenues out there? Or let me see if there is any. So for an extended period of time, I think I was in denial just because I kept doing research and I couldn't find any digital ad networks at scale that were doing it effectively. So one thing led to another. I said, oh, well, that's definitely an area that needs to be serviced. So I basically quit my job and said, we're going to go at it full scale. So I brought over my head developer that worked with me, and we built our own ad network, ad stack, everything from scratch.
That's awesome. We've talked, and you and I have talked a lot in the past about the challenges that cannabis companies face when it comes to digital advertising. How are you guys able to help them with that and make that possible?
So digital advertising is a very broad term. Digital advertising, some people say, oh, it's social media. Some people say it's SEO. Some people say it's SEM. In digital advertising does encompass all that. What we're able to do is we're able to provide an avenue with digital ads through content site, whether it's video ads, display ads, or native ads. And that in itself is a space that needs to be serviced simply because Google's laws and regulations and Facebook's, it's straightforward. You cannot promote anything that's cannabis related, period. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. People ask me all the time, like, oh, well, what's going to happen if Facebook and Google open up their doors tomorrow and cannabis is federally legal? And the truth of the matter is I don't think a lot is going to change, simply just because, and I've said this before, there's other bigger industries outside of cannabis that Google and Facebook don't allow digital advertising. As an example, the pharmaceutical industry. Yep. You know, you can't see anything on digital. Alcohol and tobacco, we know. Bitcoin is cryptocurrency is kind of a touchy subject because recently Facebook had banned crypto, and even more recently, they reversed that ban. And they reversed that ban conveniently because there is rumor that they're going to be investing in Coinbase, a crypto company. Go figure, right?
Funny how that works.
That wouldn't
be the first time that's happened.
Exactly. So, but it works. It works for them. So, and they can do it. So, it's challenging to say the least.
Absolutely. So, can we talk a little bit about how that works, how the process works for cannabis companies? Because I know that even CBD companies have some limitations and similar limitations around them right now with a few exceptions. But, you know, the laws are specific state by state. How do you help brands advertise correctly?
Good question. And I think I shared our long, extensive document with you. And what we did is we did a 29-page outline, because it's not even a full document. It's an outline on the state-by-state advertising guidelines when it comes to CBD and cannabis products, with hot links or hyperlinks directly to the state site, which specifies the advertising guidelines for that particular state. And because it's so gray and so unclear, let's say that, it is hard to navigate. And it's kind of the wild, wild west still, where certain things are legal in certain states have certain regulations when it comes to advertising. But what we try to do is we try to put that in perspective and provide as much information as we can for our advertisers so they can make an educated decision on the states that they're actually advertising and how to do it effectively.
That's awesome, and it's so important too. So if I'm a brand that wants to advertise, or if I'm helping a company that wants to advertise, how do they go about it? And what can they target? What does it take to get started? Because I'm really fascinated by being able to do this at scale. So can you talk us through the process a little bit in terms of how that works and how you make scale possible? So
at any digital ad network, including us, the process is all self-serve. As a marketing agency or an actual brand, you can go in there, register to the platform, fund your account with as little as like $250, and then you can start updating or creating campaigns. And on the campaign level, we're able to target up to 249 countries worldwide for advertising. So we have eyeballs in 249 countries. But aside from the countries, we can go as specific as, let's take an example. Let's say you have a product, you want to focus on U.S. audience. We could say U.S. We could say down to the state. So if you want to say California, we can target only people in California. We even can go down to the county. So you could do very hyper-targeting in which your ad will only show up, say, for example, in San Diego County. Mm-hmm. Or you can select multiple counties where it's San Diego, L.A., Los Angeles, and be county-specific on the users that you're trying to address. And that helps brands because if they're only able to sell a product, let's say in the U.S., and only in California because they're regulated by federal guidelines that they can't cross state lines, then we're able to do that very effectively for them.
And you can narrow it down by user and behavior, like user demographics and behavior as well, or what does that look like on the non-geo side?
So we can go browser targeting, operating system targeting, device targeting, whether it's mobile, desktop, keyword targeting, all the above. There is some data overlays that we're currently exploring for age and demographic targeting.
Okay.
But you have to really understand it, like where the targeting comes from. Your IP address is really what determines what the targeting demographics are. So as an example, when you sign up for the internet, your internet provider does not ask you for your gender or your age or your income or any of that information. So therefore, it doesn't transfer over for targeting. But more importantly on that topic briefly is you don't know who's behind that screen, because the internet could be registered to you, but it could be your puppy for all I know, using your computer. I don't know how old he is, or, male or female. And that happens to everybody. You have multiple people in a household where the IP address is only registered to one user, but there's kids, there's nieces, there's nephews, there's, spouses, all accessing the internet with one source, which is very difficult to target who's behind that screen.
Absolutely. Now, tell us a little bit about the types of websites that you can advertise on, or that people can advertise on. So if let's go back to my imaginary cannabis brand of, let's say, edibles, that is specifically trying to target people in San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, for example. Right. What does that look like in terms of the websites? What websites are available to me to advertise on?
Good question. So we've identified two different sectors. Well, two main sectors that we work with. Cannabis direct sites, which is exactly what it sounds like. Cannabis focused sites, we work with those directly. But we also work with non-cannabis sites, which we call mainstream sites. Okay. It could be your lifestyle sites. And I think that's even a more important sector than the cannabis direct, because cannabis direct sites is if you were advertising to yourself as a brand or your small community. Mm-hmm. And as a brand, the bigger picture is advertising to people that don't know about your brand, the people that you didn't know potentially to be a new consumer or a new buyer. And that's kind of where those lifestyle brands that we work with currently come into play on the mainstream side. And we've identified certain verticals that kind of correlate directly with cannabis. To give you an idea, music sites, obviously, reggae, hip hop, alternative rock, all those sites have a direct correlation with cannabis, and for the most part, it's an older demographic. Also, extreme sports, snowboarding, skateboarding, all that has a direct correlation. Investment sites as well, because investment in cannabis is hot right now, and investment sites want that interaction. And lifestyle sites on the natural health and the soccer mom kind of approach to all that. So it depends. And we have kind of a large variety of inventory for all the above.
So what you're saying is that I could create ads can I create specific ads for each audience or for each type of sites? What does that look like on the platform? How much flexibility is there to really try and relate to that target audience that you're trying to reach?
When it comes to targeting an audience, you can create a campaign for each one of those audiences. And you could do multiple creatives under one campaign, so you could do A/B testing and see which one's getting the better interaction.
That is awesome. So as this is really, I was so excited to meet Christian for many reasons, but one of them being it's such an amazing opportunity for cannabis companies to be able to open up another avenue of advertising. To Christian's point, that Facebook advertising is what it is, and we've talked about that, and we'll continue to talk about that from a social media standpoint. But also, not being able to use Google AdWords, we really have to rely on things like search engine optimization, which is more a pull strategy. So you're trying to bring people to your site. But what Traffic Roots and Christian and his team have been able to do is really put that strategy together to help companies push out their message, increase awareness and conversions for that audience. What can you give us a few tips on what companies need to consider when creating campaigns?
Know your audience. Know where you can ship your product. Logistically, like if you are a brand and it's a THC product, then that it's restricted to your state for what you're trying to do. Now, if you're branding, it's different. If you're basically telling somebody to go shop at XY dispensary or something, yes, it's restricted to the state. That makes sense. But there's a good opportunity for a brand or a dispensary, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. If they're emerging into a new state, you could definitely do creative campaigns to be like coming soon or coming, whatever that creative approach is, and that you can do. So it's as creative as you want to get, really, and as creative as you want to get to an approach for your marketing. I would say marketing is an encompass of a lot of things, not just one, like we talked at the beginning. Not one single thing is going to give you results. I think you have to do a combination of multiple things. And by doing so, then you're going to see results across the board. But running a digital campaign at the display level only is not going to work as well as if you do display, social, and everything in between in addition to display. And I think that's more effective.
That is absolutely more effective. It's something I teach students when I'm at the university, is very much the old school idea of an integrated campaign, because the more touch points you have, the more effective your message is going to be when it's consistent across all the different channels. So you mentioned strategies to consider when creating campaigns. Because you can use that. That's huge, right? You could even use that to test campaigns and to see which state you're going to get more traction in. Theoretically, right. If you're trying to decide which state to go into next, if you have that kind of flexibility, that's really fascinating to be able to really target. What would you say is the creative impact on audiences and the power of A/B testing?
So it's a pretty significant. A/B testing is psychology means statistics meets business revenue or ROI kind of embedded. And the way it works is if you have 3 different ads that are saying the same message, and what you're changing is the image, you could basically put those 3 against each other and see which one's going to perform better. And it could be as simple as one's blue, one's red, and one's green. But for whatever reason, the blue ad is getting more clicks and more interaction. So you technically kick out the other 2 colors and you introduce 2 new ones, and then do that test again. And you're consistently testing against the higher performing ad. And that's just on the creative side. You could also go into testing on the landing page side, where you have multiple iterations of your landing page to see exactly which one's getting the most click-throughs or the most kind of sales funnel flow. And by doing so, then you get the winner from the landing page plus the winner from the display. You put them together, there's your winner, and you continue to benchmark against the top performing ad/landing page combination.
And what tips do you have? Because I've seen people do A/B testing and actually do it really well and make it really a successful test. And I've seen people fail at A/B testing. So where the results weren't meaningful, what tips do you have for people that are looking to test their creative and test their campaigns to be, to get the most out of what the money they're investing in it?
I would probably say the number one thing is understand what you're looking for, analytics-wise, and understand what those analytics mean for you and your brand, and how that transitions over to an ROI for your product. And then obviously understanding what your ROI is. If you're specifically selling a product, then you can actually do conversion tracking, or you can actually see how many sales are being done. But if you're not selling a product online, what are you looking for? What's that metric is the first question I would ask. Are you looking for signups? Are you looking for leads? Are you looking for what? What is that one action that you're telling people to do once they click on the ad? And it's important to understand the ad is an attention grabber only. It's designed to grab somebody's attention, create curiosity, maybe answer a question or ask a question to have people click on it so they can end up on a landing page that gives them more information on why they clicked on that ad. It's not click on an ad, buy now. That doesn't work. You gotta click on an ad, give me more info on why I should buy it or why I should use your service, and then continue with the purchase or with the lead or whatever that might be that you're capturing.
Right? It's not, do you like me? Yes, no, marry me, right?
Yes. That's a great analogy. It's it's exactly right.
Get to know me first.
It's very, yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's one of those things where you capture somebody's attention, probably with who you are or what you're wearing or whatever that is the ad. Right. And then once they click on it and they get to know more about you, that's the coffee date. And everything after that I don't know. You call it whatever you want.
It's out of my hands.
It's out of my hands.
One more thing I wanted to add about A/B testing is, to Christian's point, it's not just important to know what you're testing and what your desired outcome is, but also I have found that people get in a hurry, so they want to test a bunch of things all at once. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of this as well, where having one thing to test at a time will actually help you understand what that answer is. Versus, okay, we're going to change this headline, we're going to change this image, and we're going to change the color of this button. Let's test it. And you're like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, I would almost start with the image only. Leave the message the same. That's the simplest thing to change. Leave the message the same, change the image in the background or whatever that is, and then start there. And that's actually a good point. Like, having a structured test environment. First, I'm going to change the image. Second, I'll change the headline. Third, maybe I'll change the offer. And having maybe those three basic things as you're going through these tasks could help identify and structure what those results are. And I think probably the number one thing, even with all those results, is being able to throw them in an Excel sheet, throw them somewhere where you can physically see everything in one, and compare and say, hey, this one with this image and this line gave me X. Whether it's impressions, click-through rate, or conversions.
Absolutely. You want to be able to maximize your spending on ads and really try and drive the most revenue from those ads, even though it might not be a click-buy type of ad campaign, to Christian's point. Right. Might be a click to add to that coffee date or more information or what have you. I want to go back to the state requirements, Christian, because some of the things that you and I have talked about in the past are the limitations and the regulations by state. So, for example, in California, the license, if it's a dispensary, the license number needs to be on the ad, and that carries through to digital, correct?
Yes, across everything. That's the intended purpose of it. Whether it's being enforced effectively and whether it's done correctly, I don't know.
And how does that, if someone runs ads on the traffic route, using the traffic route site, who's responsible if the ads aren't compliant to the state requirements?
So we provide a level of compliance where we check everything internally on our admin side, make sure it does meet some sort of requirements. Mm-hmm. I guess the bigger question is it clear as of to what kind of the license number and whose license number is it? What kind of a license? Because that's kind of broad. Right. Is it a vertical integrated license? Is it a dispensary license? Is it a distribution license? Like, what license number goes on that? I think it makes sense. So there's a trackable identifier. I mean, they do it for real estate. They do it for construction contractors. I think it's a valid point.
Absolutely. Because it could be anybody, it's really important to be able to track that information, especially online. So I'm always so fascinated about being able to run campaigns and have the tools to run campaigns, because it's such a critical part of being able to reach clients. Do you have any examples of clients that you've worked with that, I'm throwing you some new questions, sorry about that. Examples of clients that you found to be effective in the types of campaigns that they ran? You don't need to mention them by name if you can't. Interestingly enough, you have to know your audience, but more also you have to be ready to experiment with audiences. As an example, there was a vaporizer company that we were working with where the vaporizer was a couple $100s. And they were specifically tailoring only to the cannabis industry. Oh. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I got on a call with them and I said, okay, well, let's find out what's going on. They changed their strategy and they only targeted investment sites. And it worked. Oh, that's interesting.
And the reason it worked and it got much better results is because it was a higher end product, higher price. And it was it's not your traditional cannabis user. I think your modern cannabis user doesn't necessarily always want to deal with a glass piece. They want to have something quick, easy, maybe in their bag. They have a couple minutes. They pull up their vaporizer, whatever that is, whether it's in between breaks. Looks clean, it's simple, and they put it away. So I think it's a more professional audience that's kind of tailoring towards the vaporizer or both. But in this particular case, for that one, it was very sleek, very modern looking. So it did appeal to that more financial professional consumer.
That's really interesting. I would think that it would also, could potentially even appeal to some of the higher end lifestyle publication sites as well.
And that was just a test that they did for investment sites, and it worked. I'm pretty sure if you threw it on lifestyle sites, it would do just as good, if not better. But that was just one example of a demographic that you didn't think was going to fit that particular product, and it did.
I wouldn't have thought that. That's awesome. What mistakes do you find people make when they're trying to start their digital advertising, whether it's on, and I'm just going to say, go ahead and say on your platform?
The level, I think, understanding the vast universe between the digital kind of world, just because you have so many users, and being able to aggregate that data, knowing what to do with the data, and then making the appropriate changes real time to improve that campaign. So I think there is a level of education, whether it's A/B testing or campaign optimization, or even copyright on an ad. Having too much text could definitely be hurtful for your campaign.
Oh my gosh. When I was at the last digital agency I was at, we had a medical device client, and they legally had to put like a little paragraph in 6-point font at the bottom of every ad, which meant we had to buy bigger ad space and then try and like bury it and try and do the lighter font until the legal team came back and told us not to. But it is hard to put. I think it's a natural inclination of people to want to give more information than rather tease them through the process.
Yeah, it's getting that message across with the least amount of words. And that is a challenge. For anything, even for marketing in general, whether it's email marketing, it's like you have to have that catchy subject. Because depending on what that subject line is can determine whether you open it or not. And it's the same thing for an ad.
Absolutely. Have you ever, this would be more for the landing page, but have you ever used the Hemingway app?
No.
Website? So it's basically, because, Hemingway was very sparse with his words, still was able to get the same level of message across and a feeling across. There's an app that they created, and it's an app you can download, which I think is like $20, or you can just put it, like it's a website you can go to, and you can copy and paste your copy into it, and it'll highlight all of the basically extraneous words or phrases that you can then consolidate and try and make it just a simpler message. I don't think I would use it for ad copy, but certainly I've used it for email and landing page copy for sure.
That's kind of interesting. Is that because Hemingway was a great writer, but I think he was only a good writer when he was under the influence of something, for what I know.
Right. I've heard that as you take a drink. I've heard that as well. But he was very lean with his words. So he used a small amount of words to get the message across. Like he's the one that did I think it's the 6-word story, which is the shortest story ever. Have you heard that? Baby shoes never worn, for sale, never worn.
Yeah, I did 2 of my college internships in Cuba, so I had the chance to go visit his house out there, which is cool. That's
a whole other story. I want to hear about that.
That's a different story. Yeah, he has a big influence in Cuban culture.
I'm sure. Yeah, I grew up in the Monterey Bay area, where everything was Steinbeck. But yeah, I can imagine that Hemingway is similar to that in Cuba.
Exactly.
So as we start to look at wrapping this up, I really want to, first of all, thank you. You've provided a lot of great information. Before we wrap up completely, I want to ask, do you have any tips for someone getting started? You mentioned know your audience. Do you have any other tips for someone who would be interested in trying traffic routes to advertise to reach their audience?
I would say get started. Don't hesitate. Obviously, we're always an email, phone call away to help out at any questions. Immerse yourself in the digital advertising world and strategies out there, and we're currently working on kind of a small library of digital strategies that we can just provide as references. Like digital marketing on the display side has been around for a long time, and it doesn't matter if it's cannabis or red widgets or blue widgets, the strategies still apply. Finding some good podcasts or finding some good literature that gives you some more insight on how to plan before you execute. Having those creatives, having different ad sizes, having different ads per size, and understanding what that user experience is going to be from ad to landing page to purchasing a product. And having the metrics not only to track the data, but also to re-engage that user. Because you could potentially capture emails, and maybe they don't convert on that first click. But if you're able to capture their email, you can definitely retarget them with email targeting, or even retarget them directly through our platform as well.
Awesome. And to your point, there's so much information to know, and that's not even getting into the whole retargeting side of it, which can be extremely effective. What was the stat you mentioned in the presentation I saw you last about the number of purchases from the first purchase versus retargeting?
If they show you a cold ad, there's a 0.01% that's going to convert into a sale or whatever the action is. But if somebody retargets you after you showed an initial interest, that 0.01% turns into a 60% conversion ratio.
It's so crazy.
Which is huge. And but if you think about it, once again, your tripod situation, if you would leave the conversation now, you open one of your websites and that tripod came on, you're going to click on it, you're going to buy it.
It's true.
Because you already saw it, you already knew you wanted it, you already picked it out, you just didn't pull the trigger. They're just helping you kind of close that sales cycle.
So when people say that display isn't always, because one of the things that, like I said, when I was at the agency, one of the things that a lot of people would complain about is display didn't always equal revenue, right? Their return on investment wasn't always equal to what they were putting into it. And I can explain the whole attribution and how display will help lead to a decision and build awareness and all those different pieces. But to your point, it's not always that first ad, right?
No, it takes a while for people to really know who you are and to trust who you are, whether it's a brand or anything else. It doesn't just happen overnight. And display is one of many ways you can do it. But if you consider the world we live in, meaning we're always connected to a digital device, then if it's not display, what else can give you that type of exposure where everybody's connected? You know,
absolutely.
I think it's a combination. You have to do display. You do have to do social media. Just be careful not to get your account down. And you got to do good old PR, I think. And I think it's all the above that equals a successful brand. You can't really focus on just one alone, like we talked about.
Yeah, no, especially with the increase of people using multiple screens. Mm-hmm. It's important to be across everywhere as long as you're targeting them. So, Christian, I really want to thank you very much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I also want to mention that Christian has a free gift or a gift for those of you who are watching. It's in the line below. Christian, do you want to tell them what it is?
Go for it. This is your show. You could kind of give out the free stuff on your show. I'm just sitting in.
All right. So if you guys email info@trafficroutes.com with the subject line Moda-promo, as you can see below. Whoops, over there, underneath Christian. He will add $100 balance to your account to get you started, so that you guys who have those cannabis brands and need to build up your target audience and reach that audience and drive sales, that you have a place to start. You have a starting point. So it's really exciting and very generous. Thank you, Christian, for offering that to everybody.
Yeah, no worries. My pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, you guys. This is Christian Valdez, CEO of Traffic Routes, and I'm Kendra Losee. So thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll see you next week where we will be talking about branding. All right? Have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye now.